Hey everyone, from the 58th Legislative District, I am State Representative Eric Devanzo.
And from the 57th Legislative District, I'm State Representative Eric Nelson. And we are E Squared.
Getting smoother and smoother.
Better every week.
Better every week, like fine whiskey, you know?
Fine wine.
Fine wine, fine wine.
We'll see how that goes. But another hot week, another scorcher out here.
It is another scorcher. Just scorcher, not much going on in the house as far as the budget, but you know, we're here.
Yeah.
A lot of moving pieces back home. You know, we got the softball back home. How about you?
Yeah, we had hay. You know, our biggest thing was successful haymaking. You know, you got to say a prayer. Fix the tractor before, and it lasted the whole way through. Will brought in the last round bales, shut the tractor off, and it died right on the spot.
What do you call your tractor? You have a name for it?
No, it's just the tractor, you know. Our biggest news was our first bull of the season, first baby cow. We call him Triple B because he happened over 4th of July. So the big, beautiful bull is going to be on there. And but today, the big special is we have some outstanding guests with us.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Straight from the softball fields.
Straight from the softball field right here. We have from the 58th District as well. What is your name, young lady?
Brielle.
Brielle what?
Devanzo.
Brielle is an avid softball player. She loves the sport. She's a pitcher. Where are you at pitching-wise now? 53 miles per hour, 54? Where are we at?
Like 55 to 57.
Oh, I don't know, but hey, that's okay. That's okay. You're allowed to exaggerate a little bit there, but good with it there. What else you do? First base, third base,
Yeah.
some outfield, a little bit of wherever you're needed, you go into, right? And you do it all with a smile on your face, right? Perfect. Tell us a little bit about the rings you got in front of you there.
These are all from softball tournaments that I've won the championships.
How's the heat? They said you guys
it's-
actually did a virtual batting practice because they canceled practice.
Remember from the
'cause it was
pizza
so
shop
hot.
that the week was hot when you were out in the batting cage hitting?
Oh, yeah.
And I was eating a pizza? Yeah.
I call my dad a lot whenever I practice, and I tell him how I do.
Yeah.
And he helps me a lot.
Yeah, well, he's proud of you. You
Yeah,
know,
heck
we are.
yeah,
I'm liking
heck yeah.
those rings.
I know.
I know. I don't think I have there's 6 there. I don't think I have 6 championship trophies from my 48 years.
I have a lot.
Well, we have
Yeah.
another guest with us from the 199th Legislative District in Cumberland County. Good friend of mine and of yours, Representative Barb Glein. Barb, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me today. Had
Yeah.
at least a little bit of movement on another issue this week, and so we'll get into that when you want to talk about it. But I'm here with your guest, who is an athlete, and we've been talking a lot about women in sports this week.
Yeah. Well, in Cumberland County, you have big farming family. Your kids are all over the world right now. I know Tracy, your husband, he's a great guy. But your scale of farming is like quadruple ours. How many calves have you had already this year?
We've only had about 8 or 9. We've got another 10 on the way. We usually keep around 70 head on average. Sometimes it gets higher, sometimes it's lower, depending on what we sell. Mm-hmm. So we raise all natural grass-fed beef, Herefords, and so it's a one-man operation, a sole proprietor, and we sell to a local food market in our area.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool, yeah.
And your kids all over the world.
Yeah. So my oldest lives in Australia and is a dual citizen there. She's been there for 7 years now. I have another child on the West Coast in Los Angeles and another in New York. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, well, Barb is she's a leader, you know, and known nationally and here in Pennsylvania. You know, you caused quite a stir yesterday on the floor.
But I got to admit, it was quite the secret because I had no idea. We were coming out. We got here right at 11 or right at noon, right as session was starting. And whenever I clicked it on is whenever I started seeing it. I'm like, yes, you go, Barb, you go. So.
Yeah, well, it wasn't meant to be a secret. We had every plan to discuss it in caucus. We started the process of introducing the legislation, the resolution in the morning, and handed it to the chief clerk. You know, they have to attach a signature page to the back. And when I got onto the House floor for, you know, to just clock in, they had put the signature page over on the other side and had started the process outside of what we were, you know, accustomed to.
Yeah.
It was actually their side that started the process and told the prime sponsors to go over and sign. So we did, and then everybody else signed, and then we went ahead and announced it because at that point, you know, they had started the process.
So what was it? Because we've been talking about the process, but
oh, sorry.
What's the bill?
So yesterday we put in for a discharge resolution. And that turned out to be House Resolution 281 into the system. And what that does is after a bill stays in a committee for over 15 legislative days, you can call that bill up outside of the committee. That's in our rules. It's Rule 53. And so we decided to start that process with Senate Bill 9. Because it was just sitting there and the committee chairman had no intent of bringing it up. So we decided that wasn't right.
That was a bipartisan bill coming in from the Senate, but what's the bill itself about? SB 9.
SB 9 is Saving Women's Sports Act. And so basically that says that we are not going to have men and boys, males, in female sports. And we're not going to have males in females' locker rooms or in private spaces in Pennsylvania. That's basically it.
Who would have ever thought this is what we have to do these days for that to happen? Honestly, all the ludicrous stuff out there that we're fighting for. I mean, look, at my daughter, that's why I fight for it right there. Those 6 rings, there's a dozen trophies, there's so many ribbons and medals. And it just, like, it angers you almost to think that we have to stop and really keep fighting for this time and time again.
Right. And we started this initiative back in 2021. It was House Bill 972. And it went through bipartisan in the House, bipartisan in the Senate. And at that point, Governor Wolf vetoed it. And so then we have to start the process all over again. And in this process, the Senate and Senator Judy Ward and Kristen Phillips Hill and Dawn Kiefer brought that same bill, that sister bill, to the House. So we have 2 bills sitting in the House. We have a House bill and a Senate bill, and none of them were moving. So we decided to discharge.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I know Brielle, Brielle, you got something to say to Barb there?
Thank you.
So it is the younger women right now in competitive sports that we are fighting for. We don't want you to lose your opportunities for college scholarships, your opportunities to advance in your sport because we have a male taking over those spots. Title IX, if you are not aware of Title IX, which was passed back in 1972, was meant to protect you. It was meant to give you those opportunities. And right now, under the previous administration, they're trying to take those opportunities away from you. And so that's why we fight.
Well, and it's actually happening, and
it is.
I know there's some pushback, and some people really don't like it, but they try to say, well, this is one person, this is two. I know our daughter played basketball, in a game with a biological male, and he was a really good athlete. He was faster, stronger, better dribbler. I mean, and when they're fighting for rebounds, and it is a safety issue. When I listen to female professional football players, and these are good people. It's not that they're bad people or evil people, but somebody who played semi-pro that now is identifying, regardless of the amount of estrogen that they're taking, there was a 100-pound, 80-pound size difference. There was muscularity difference, and athletes were getting hurt. What do you see, Barb? Because you're really national and statewide.
Sure. I mean, back in 2021, there weren't as many instances of it because it was just beginning, right? But now we have seen, a woman athlete, volleyball player, actually have her nose broken. She was paralyzed with a spike to the head. We have boxers that we saw in the Olympics that ended up being 2 males boxing in the female category. Because, and on their way up, they were hurting women, and women were actually, just opting out because they knew they weren't going to be able to compete with a male. In the track and field, you've seen it, and the swimming, of course, that's where it all started here at UPenn. And they're definitely taking those podium spots. We've had a whole volleyball team actually out in the West just decide that they were going to forfeit. And they weren't going to play a team because it's dangerous. It is a safety issue. Yeah. And everybody is seeing that now playing out on television.
Well, we've seen it in track. At Henfield High School is our school, and there was a girl a couple of years ago that, it happened this past season too, that, but the guy started on the men's track and throwing and was in the middle of the pack, and then at the end of the season when it came time to go for states, then he competed against the girls, and one of the Henfield girls lost her spot to be able to advance.
Sure.
Like she's not going to do track and field for her life, and she moved on, but the opportunity to travel and compete and get bumped by somebody who compete with your biological side.
Sure. That's what Title IX was all about, is to have your own category based off of your sex, male and female. We want to know who the best female is, don't you? That's what competition is. And so when you have males competing in women's sports, they already have their category, right? They already have a basketball opportunity. Back in 1972, when these women were fighting to have their own basketball and their own soccer, that's what this was all about. And we want to keep that civil rights law in place.
Yeah, and so when you hear some of the stories, the Riley Gaines story about how she's in that locker room with someone she's competing against, and their manhood is still intact yet, go and complain to the college, this isn't right, NCAA, they come back with, hey, if you don't silence, we're going to pull your scholarships back. Is this really where we're at? And then, you see some of the jousting, right? Whenever some of the females, they surrender. They got to go out and kneel down and surrender with their head down. Listen, to me, that takes courage. You should not be going out there kneeling down to a man for that. That's something, you should be proud of what you did. Hold your head up high with that, because you're fighting, you're fighting against something that it just doesn't make any sense. And, these guys that, right, they lost in their own sport. So now what are they doing? Right. We're going to go become a female on paper so that we can win. And it's just not right.
Right. If you've ever listened to Paula Scanlon talk about her experiences as well, Riley is amazing and talks about her experience. And Paula also, she talks about having to go and change in a broom closet. She talks about the experience of having to change in a locker room next to a male, and how the school did come in and make her do that. But that is all being righted now. Last week, the Secretary of Education announced that UPenn is rescinding all of the things that they did. They're going to be writing apology letters to all of the female athletes, and going forward, those women are not going to have to be, susceptible to those type of situations. But we need that to happen all across the United States. We need to keep fighting for women in sports and for the next generation. That's really why I do it, is for the next generation as well. So I appreciate you.
And we're good that the current, president, the administration, the Trump administration, backs us, is on our side on this. But what happens? That's why we got to keep fighting, because what happens in 3 years, 4 years, whenever we don't have a favorable administration in there on this topic? Because we're going to go backwards.
Right. Right now, Pennsylvania is not totally adhering to the executive order of the president. And a lot of these schools could put themselves in jeopardy for losing their federal funding. And so that's another reason why we need to be doing this right now, is to make sure that everybody knows that this is the law and we're going to be abiding by it. So we'll see what happens with the bill, and I'm hoping to, be able to discharge it here pretty soon.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
important to note, because we're all citizens, and everyone has their rights, under the Constitution to be able to be here. We're all Americans. I think your effort, and why we applaud it, is because you're trying to protect and allow women to be able to compete against themselves. It's not an anti-effort. It's a positive thing to say, have at it with people that are your same age or your same caliber, and not an unfair physical advantage from somebody who's joining. I mean, their choices are their choices, but they shouldn't impact the safety or your ability to be able to compete by crossing that Title IX barrier. That's why it was created.
Correct.
So thank
Thank
you,
you for
Barb.
that.
So, Brielle, of your 4-H, volleyball, basketball, softball, which one do you wake up in the morning and you just talk about all day long?
Softball.
How many reels do I get a day from softball and baseball? Umpires making bad calls, or who has the fastest pitch in softball?
Carlin Pickens, 79.4.
So every time it goes up, I get the alert on a house floor. Dad, you're not going to believe what just happened. But this is someone, and what do you want to do when you get older? What is your ambitions in life?
I want to graduate from Oklahoma University for softball, and I want to be a college softball coach at Oklahoma University after I graduate.
See, so
Sweet.
this is
That's
someone
a good
who
goal.
is, her whole life and our checking account and our paychecks are based around this kid going to softball, and that's something that we're going to push for. I'm going to continue working with Barb. I can't thank you enough for your efforts on this, and this is why right here, why I definitely fight for it, and I'll continue to fight for it. So thank you
you.
once again.
Yeah, way to go, Barb.
Any closing words before we go? You didn't say too much. You all right?
Yeah.
All right, we
All
did
righty.
it.
I think we're good.